Greetings, dear friends. We are sincerely glad to greet you again. And today we are going to talk with the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Hello.
Igor Mikhailovich, at the end of the previous conversation, when you were asked the question of how to gain life, you said simple, but at the same time very significant and very deep words, that one shouldn't serve Satan, but start with a simple thing, just to love each other. And in every video you emphasize this commandment of loving one's neighbor. In practice, it is certainly not easy to follow this commandment. It is not always easy to love one's neighbor. Sometimes we are indignant, angry, and may even hate our neighbors for their deeds, faults, or certain behavior. But then we recall this commandment to love our neighbor, and we try to love them just as zealously, with all our strength. But what is implied by that? We either try to justify our neighbor in some way, or we try to humble ourselves and accept him with all his faults, with all the anger that sometimes comes from this neighbor. And then it is very difficult to love such an individual again. Eventually, this results in a vicious circle from hatred to love and back, which exhausts people very much. So a question arises. Where can we actually find strength to love our neighbor? And why is such a seemingly simple commandment to love one's neighbor so difficult for people to follow?
Everything is very simple. It is much easier for us to love a person who is not close to us because we do not expect anything from him. Whereas with a neighbor, we always compete over who will control whom. In other words, it's a banal struggle for power.
It's true. Our friend said that as soon as they hear from Igor Mikhailovich, love each other, consciousness immediately redirects that to loving someone somewhere, but not those people who are near.
That's right. We perceive those who are near as competitors deeply at the subconscious level, as those with whom we share our own space. Naturally, here there is both confrontation and love, so to say. Therefore, it is really difficult for people to perceive how they can love their neighbor. On the one hand, how can I not love him? He is actually a neighbor. But on the other hand, how can I love him? After all, I will now devote all my love and time to him, while he will manipulate me, or vice versa. Right? This is a natural process. Why does the difficulty arise? First of all, friends, because you are trying to love someone else's consciousness by means of your own consciousness. That's impossible. Our consciousness is unable to love. This is really so. Our consciousness is able to manipulate, to seek its own benefit. And love from consciousness is, first and foremost, a benefit. If there is no benefit, there is no love either. That's how simple everything is. You know, like in business. Meanwhile, from personality, there always comes love and understanding. As some people say, sometimes it is difficult to love even a neighbor if he is not good. But later on, we accept the situation and try to somehow overcome this bad attitude towards him and his anger. We try to love him the way he is and so on. Yet whom are you trying to love, friends? A simple question. The demon in a person, or the person himself. You know, the simplest and the most difficult question is, whom should you love in a person? After all, a human is dual. There's both an angel and a demon in him, right? If you're trying to force the demon in yourself to love another demon, or to love an angel through that demon, that's impossible.
Consciousness often says, if I were in his shoes, I wouldn't do what he did.
This is a frequent question, but friends, there is a simple answer here. If I were in his shoes, I wouldn't do that. Anyone, being in any person's shoes, would do exactly the same thing as that person did. Why? Because you would be in his shoes. My friend, that is, you would be exactly the same, and you would be motivated in exactly the same way by your own consciousness. For the same deed, you condemn. You see how simple everything is.
Igor Mikhailovich, after the video Blessed are the poor in spirit, the most popular question that came from the guys was how to give love. What does it mean to give 100% of love, leaving nothing for oneself? And how to properly give it so that you don't give it to the system, so that it wouldn't be magic? Many people assume that it is certainly not some kind of action in three-dimensionality, that the poor in spirit means that people give away light and love. Is this really the case?
If a person gives away only light and love, then I have a simple question. What about the prophets? Well, indeed, let's take Jesus Christ, and let's take the life of the best of people, the Prophet Muhammad. Did they come, sit, shine, and love? A simple question. Or did they act? How long did Jesus Christ just sit and love, shining at that? Or did he go to people and talk to them? Let's say, most of the time. Right? Or the Prophet Muhammad. Yes, he performed practices, just like Jesus did, but that was his personal time, when he lived for himself and shone for himself. As for the rest of time, when he wasn't doing practices, he devoted it to people. This way, both of them showed that to share love means exactly to live for people and to transmit it to the last drop. Here's the very essence. Why? Because when a person takes love and doesn't give it away, everything stagnates. Let's take a river. After all, everything is repeated fractally, as within, so without. So we take a river. If the river flows, and it flows fast, the water in it is pure, right?
Yes.
But if it has stopped, just turned into a lake, and if this lake doesn't change the water, then this water turns into stagnation and a swamp, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, the love that we share, which doesn't belong to us, this spiritual love belongs to the spiritual world. And when it passes through us, it stimulates us to what? To an action, to an accumulation. Do we try to accumulate it within ourselves? Where? A simple question. In what?
Is there a reservoir where it can be accumulated?
Exactly. And that's where the entire meaning is. The more you give it to people, you pass it on, not in your thoughts, not in fantasies and inactivity, but in real action, in serving people. Because by serving people here, we serve the spiritual world. And the more we receive and the more we give, the purer our waters are. And this is where accumulation manifests itself in the purity of the water that passes through you, and not in its quantity.
Igor Mikhailovich, many people also say, how is it to give 100% of everything to someone? After all, you should also accumulate this love yourself. Consciousness tells you you should take care of yourself a little bit as well, and of your own spiritual salvation.
And here's the key point. Consciousness says, that is, the devil, Satan, teaches a person how to reach the spiritual world. Well, isn't it so? Why? Because we think. We think with the help of our consciousness, by material criteria anyway, don't we? We judge everything, and we perceive everything compared to something else, associatively. Therefore, we also try to put the same labels on spiritual things with the help of consciousness, right?
Kind of physics of three-dimensionality.
Of course. While this is a different physics, these are different processes. The more pure waters pass through us, and the purer those waters are, the more we accumulate it, the more valuable the spiritual world becomes for us, the more valuable the lives of people whom we can really help become. This way we accumulate it. We become a part of the spiritual world, a conductor.
So it's not that you have some, let's say, a
Reserve.
reserve you have filled, and suddenly you need a bigger space. So your energy structure,
And
yes,
every time you need more and more, right? It cannot withstand it.
from such a pyramidal shape, let's
A
say,
pyramidal shape.
it turns into a rhombic one because you have accumulated so much.
Exactly. And later on, you should expand it and add a warehouse.
Yes, exactly.
I see. This relates to the question of why we sometimes become overweight, right? We need to have more space.
Exactly.
Well, if you look from this perspective, just consider Buddha and a lot more, especially the East, all kidding aside. But lamas and spiritual personalities there, all of them suffered from obesity. This is really so. Why? Was it because they required bigger bodies for accumulating spirituality? Well, Jesus Christ didn't suffer from obesity, nor did the Prophet Muhammad, you see, but they had no less love in them than Buddha had.
So, Igor Mikhailovich, attaining love is, first of all, a widening of this silver thread, so to say,
Like the Buddhas.
through which this pure current already flows.
Wait, no, you already speak about spiritual matters. By and large, all jokes aside, yes, this is definitely so.
When a person is distracted,
The closer you are to the spiritual world, the stronger the flow, and the purer Allah is. Naturally, you can pass more of it to people, and it's never enough. When a person is really in the service of God's world, when life truly awakens in him, then no matter how much power the spiritual world gives him, it is never enough for him because there are so many people who are suffering and in need. Sometimes a lot of strength is needed to help those suffering, little angels from the demon's tyranny. Sometimes one really needs a lot of strength to help a person so that he can take a deep breath at least once as a free being without Satan's dictation. At times, this does help a lot of people, but that requires strength.
meaning that power which crushes these barriers from soul to soul.
Of course, this is where the answer is hidden to how to love someone. You don't need to love someone. You need to love yourself in another person, friends, because we, all of us, are part of one whole organism, the spiritual world. Just like cells in the body, you and I already talked about this and gave those examples. So if we primarily see in a person an angel as a part of the spiritual world, then we cannot but love him because he is a part of us, because he is us, the same as who we are. However, if we, by means of our consciousness, try to love consciousness or deeds a person performed to the dictation of consciousness, then nothing will work out.
Igor Mikhailovich, you have given such wonderful examples of God's messengers, of those who give this very love and share light with people near them. But many people will say, of course, I'm still far from being like the prophet, God's messenger. But how can I help others if I am drowning myself? After all, consciousness says that a person should first purify himself and grow spiritually himself, and only afterwards should he go out to people, give and share this light. Is this true?
From consciousness, it really is true, because consciousness dictates if you fall into an ice hole along with someone, how can you save anyone, right? You need to get on solid ice and then pull the other person out. However, from the perspective of the spiritual world, it doesn't matter where you are by saving someone's life. You first of all save yourself because it is merely a body, whereas life is something completely different. And the whole point here is precisely to give what you receive, what you have felt, and to share it with other people. Sometimes it's enough for a person just to open his mouth and be surprised that truth and wisdom pour out of him at the behest of the Holy Spirit. Everything is very simple.
He himself can't stop listening.
When you serve, of course, you yourself cannot stop listening. When you really serve the spiritual world, when you stop being a slave of Satan and dedicate your life to service. While to serve the spiritual world means, first of all, to serve people, to serve those who are suffering more than you are. Even if you yourself suffer greatly from Satan's oppression, you should help other people even more because you understand perfectly well how hard it is to be manipulated by Shaitan. After all, you want to become free, and so do other people. Imagine how hard it is for a personality who doesn't even know that it is personality, who doesn't even know that it is possible to live in a different way, that it is possible to live with God and not to the dictation of consciousness, and that our world is like this just because Satan rules in it. Although a human can rule, a human with a capital letter H, a human who serves God here in this world. This is actually possible. You see how simple everything is. Then there is joy. Then it is pleasant. Then a person really feels this power of God which passes through him. But there are other aspects here as well. If a person starts thinking that this is his own power, there will be trouble. In this case, if consciousness is strong, while a human's personality is weak, consciousness can hook him and start telling him, "Look how strong you are. You yourself are already a source of light." And that's it. It will immobilize him. It will close practices for him, and the flow will disappear, but it will create an illusion, such an illusion of a person shining in the dark. In other words, a person will perceive himself as if he's a luminary, but at this time he's just a candle, nothing more. And he no longer has anything to do with spirituality except his own self-perception.
Igor Mikhailovich, indeed, our friends shared that at those moments when they sincerely share true knowledge with people, when they speak about the creative society, they feel this inner fire burning inside. And even physically, it feels like heat and goosebumps all over their bodies. And what you described,
Certainly.
that a person doesn't know what he will say the next minute, to such an extent he himself cannot stop listening to the flow of the conversation, as if he is simply providing his vessel for something greater.
For the Holy Spirit.
Yes, exactly.
Right? That's what the service is about. Yet many people would like to provide their own vessels for the Holy Spirit in order to exploit it later on for their own material benefit. Consciousness suggests that. Isn't it so, friends? That's what consciousness is for. You see, consciousness immediately provides arguments. If this doesn't benefit you, why do you need it? Without understanding simple things, that the benefit should be for everyone. Now, you've started talking about the creative society, right? And again, where do the roots of the creative society grow from? I'll put it simply, friends, from the spiritual world. And if you actually look, when volunteers, people build the creative society, is it a holy deed or not? It is holy, of course, it is. First of all, a spiritual path. Why? I'll give a simple example. What did Jesus Christ talk about, and what did he teach? What did the Prophet Muhammad, the best of people, talk about and teach? What is his constitution of the Prophet himself? Isn't it really the creative society? I mean, we are now doing what they wanted back then.
How can all those different people get along? It would seem what unites them, it's exactly about this.
The entire meaning of the creative society also comes down to the fact that Satan's power over people will diminish. What does Satan manipulate people with? First of all, with a lack of freedom, with thirst, an insatiable thirst for power, domination over someone, and of course material benefits, as well as through health. This is also a very strong argument, through the fear of death, right? And it often hooks people, finding some kind of a defect, because there are practically no people who would be happy with their bodies. Consciousness always drives a person into some kind of framework, like a horse into a yoke, and then it attaches a harness, you see? Everything is very simple. When a person begins to live more free of material things, when he understands that he is socially and financially protected, there is time to think about something greater. That's where the power of Satan diminishes a little. And then it is easier for people, let's say, to think also about God and about their future, especially since there is such a possibility. This is a holy deed. And again, if there is more justice in the world, if there is really more freedom, and love in the world. That's actually better than anger, strife, and wars. Well, everything is simple.
You know, this dedication and service to other people really ignites the hearts of those who are even watching this. I remember a comment of one of our participants who said that precisely this inner spark and this experience for feelings, which didn't return for so long, manifested itself at those moments when she was watching one person sincerely helping another one.
Of course.
And this very understanding that not only do we look at people, but people, every person also looks at us. So by showing this sincerity and love, we ourselves cannot even imagine how it probably ignites the heart of another person. And the creative society is precisely such kind of society. A society of people who act with sincerity and dedication, constantly kindling and igniting one another.
That is correct. I'll put it this way, the creative society is a society of people who want to live. That's first and foremost, but it is also a society for everyone. Therefore, it's a good chance.
Igor Mikhailovich, let me also ask you the following question. Should we share this light, this inner love, with all people or only with those who are ready to hear?
What does it mean, ready to hear? Does it mean to search for a demon who wants to hear, or to search for a person who is free of such a demon? One who is free of a demon is already liberated. Who needs a doctor, a sick or a healthy person?
A sick one.
That's the point. If we bring the medicine, why would we give it to the healthy? First of all, it should be given to the sick, right? And the best medicine is love, friends. Therefore, let's just love each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, friends. Peace be with you.